Anyone want to tell me, and excuse me, I've been battling a cold all week, but anyone want to tell me what happened by 6 o'clock this morning? And what's going to happen by noon today? Exactly. By 6 o'clock this morning, we lost one of our fellow Ohioans. By noon, there'll be another one. By 6 o'clock this evening, another one. By midnight tonight, a fourth one. We lose 4 people a day to drug overdoses. That's 28 a week. That's 1,400 and some odd citizens. 1,400, almost 1,500 citizens we lose a year because of drug overdoses. I hope by the end, you heard from a couple great speakers this morning. They've talked about prescription drugs, they've talked about heroin. I hope by the end that you'll understand that a perfect storm hit this country that caused not only an increase in prescription drug deaths, but also an increase in heroin deaths, and combined have absolutely devastated the United States. And Ohio's been hit as hard as any state in the Union. Second number, fatal and non-fatal poisonings cost us $3.6 billion annually. $3.6 billion annually in Ohio alone. Our overdose death rate tripled in 7 years. We were ahead of the rest of the country. Unfortunately, the rest of the country still doubled. That's a lot of people dying that weren't dying prior to 1999. Prescription opioids were involved in at least 4 out of 10 fatal overdoses in Ohio in 2009. That was more than heroin and cocaine combined. Unfortunately, when we come back next year, the year after, that statistic's not going to be as good because, as we know, huge increase in heroin overdoses. Cuyahoga County is experiencing it. It's the same across the state. It's the same across the country. This one, direct correlation. Orman showed a slide earlier during his presentation. This is putting it into a sentence. 99 to 2007, our distribution increased 325%. Our overdose death rate increased 305%. That's almost a 1-to-1 correlation. It's unheard of in statistics. Now, if you pay attention to this one, this was a slide that Orman showed, and if you remember in his slide, this bottom part would have been the heroin epidemic the last time we experienced it in Ohio. Then we have crack cocaine, and we see the huge spike in prescription drugs. And the reason I point this out is the first time we went through the heroin epidemic, as you can see, a little bit of an increase. This heroin epidemic that we're about to enter, that Cuyahoga County is already experiencing, there's a reason why it's going to spike like prescription drugs as opposed to the last time when we went through it in the late 70s, early 80s. And we'll get to that. That's part of that perfect storm that I'm going to tell you about. So what happened during this time frame? Why this increase? We can pinpoint it. You heard Orman talk about 1997 being the year that they can go back, and at that time we were 7 doses per capita in Ohio. Now we're at 67 doses. How many people do we have from the medical profession here? Anybody want to take a guess why 1997 is kind of the magic year? Kind of, right track. Absolutely. Pain was added as the 5th vital sign. There was a movement in the country that we were undertreating patients' pain, and we had to adequately treat pain. Unfortunately, there was not a lot of evidence-based research at the time on how we were going to treat pain, but we had these great cancer drugs out there that were to make people's lives more comfortable into life situations. So we decided we were going to start using those to treat chronic pain. What I tell you about the early 1900s, we had how many women addicted in the United States to opiates? If we go back throughout history, how many times have we seen other civilizations addicted to opiate-like products? So we're going to treat people over time, chronic, not acute, but chronic over time. we're going to treat them with opiates. What did we think was going to happen? I'm not a medical profession, but we didn't have a professional. But I do know if you use opiates long enough, you're going to get addicted. It's just the nature of what we know. History has told us. We didn't learn from history. Now there's a movement in the medical community that says, and I'm quoting a physician, a well-known physician in Central Ohio who treats pain. He got up at a conference and was addressing several pain management specialists and addressed them by simply saying, this 15-year experiment of treating pain using opiates has clearly been a failure. Now it's time to go back. And he said, now it's time for us to learn what these opiates do, the dangers of them, and use them in situations where they're appropriate, which may be in the use of treating long-term chronic pain, but we need research to back that up. And that's the movement. Education in the medical community has hit an all-time high on this issue. So hopefully what we see is much more responsible prescribing. And what I tell people, when we've looked at prescribers throughout Ohio, you can break it down into three groups. You have a percentage, which is probably 4 or 5%, who specialize in it. They do it right. They take care of their patients. They know when to treat them, when to prescribe opiates. Last resort, build them up to that. Nothing else will work. They start prescribing opiates. You have the bottom 2 to 3%, which are the ones that I get to deal with. And those are the ones that say, I've got a license to make money, and I don't care if I harm a patient or not. That's only about 2%, but they've done a lot of damage, and they've done a lot of damage here, Scioto County, all over the state. Those are the ones we prosecute, take their license, put them in prison. What is even scarier is that middle group, that other 90-some% that have the ability to prescribe, but may lack the education specifically to what opiates can do. And unfortunately, for years, the only education they were receiving were from pharmaceutical companies that were pandering their product off. And now the medical community has come back and said, we're going to educate our own and make sure they know the power that they have and how to use it. So that's the new movement. That's a great effort, and the medical community got there on their own without being forced by legislation or some other law to do it. So let's move past that. We're going to skip through this. 900% increase in 15 years. That's, Orman showed you this, 7 pills and 97 per person, 67 in 2010.